Andrew, if you want to take it away, I'll just admit people as they come in.
Okay, no problem. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the MHG broker update. We missed last month, so we're trying to catch up. So if you guys haven't been on one of these before, this is kind of a open forum. John and I usually have a couple things we want to hit on, but then we open it up to questions. Anything that you guys have that you want to ask us, while you have us on this call. So what I wanted to start with today is, I guess, something that's pretty important to everybody, and that's the market stats. So Armless is usually about, their September stats will come out probably at the end of this week. So right now we only have the August stats. And so in August, there was 8,614 transactions. So my home group did 1,466 transactions, which if you do the math is about 17% of all transactions came through our brokerage, which is an astronomical number. So year over year, inventory is actually only up by 0.8%. New inventory. And then total inventory year over year is actually down 14.4%. Now this is for August. They haven't released September. So that's for August. And then supply for inventory for July was 1.24 months and August is 1.34 months. So still in a very severe undersupplied market. Now, so Armless doesn't have stats for September, but I have our stats for September. So in September, we closed even more transactions. We closed 1,578 transactions in September, which is probably going to be 18 to 19% of the market that came through this brokerage. We also accepted 1,534 contracts and we took 668 listings, which if you do the math, when I said active listings were about 8,000, I mean, we're running about 8 to 9% of listings and 17 to 18 to 19% of transactions come through the brokerage. So huge market share that we've taken in Maricopa County. Some of this is obviously from outside markets, but the majority of our business is done in Maricopa County, which includes Santan. And, Armless stretches outside of Maricopa County a little bit. They go to Maricopa, there's some Pinal County listings come in there occasionally, some Prescott listings come in there occasionally when the agents have dual membership. So overall, very, very good for our brokerage, very healthy, very strong numbers for us. So that's kudos to everybody on the call. Kudos to John and I for reviewing all those files. It's why we're here. It's why we have a job. So that's pretty much it on the overview of the market stats. Does everybody have any questions or comments or concerns about stats, what they're seeing out there, what they're feeling out there? From my perspective, dealing with a few of my own clients, depending on the price point and location, it can still be very crazy. The sub $400,000 investor market is a nightmare still, with multiple offers on every single property. And even the plus 500 cash for condos in Scottsdale was pretty ruthless and pretty bloodthirsty. So that's been my experience. I don't know, some of the other areas or in single family or other price points, what you guys are feeling, but that's been my experience in those two specific price points. Anybody have any questions or comments or concerns about any of that? No? All right. So the major thing that I want to get into today is marketing. And marketing has two separate facets. So we have as an agent, what we market to the public to get business, right? We have our cards, our websites, our whatever it is, Facebook page, whatever that we have that is forward facing, the public sees it. Just as a reminder, your employing broker has to be prominent on all those advertisements. You have to have, if you want to be super compliant, you have to have the MLS logo, fair housing logo, all those things on there. So if you have any questions on your marketing, just submit it to the broker's email or John or myself, and we can review it for you before you put it out there. Usually it's or ADRE, if they get a complaint, usually depending on what it is, it'll just be a slap on the wrist, and it depends on who who said it, how long it's been going on, and who reported it. So if it's from my experience, what I've seen, if it's a broker to broker complaint, it's usually just, hey, change it. If it's a consumer complaint and the consumer feels like they're misled, ADRE looks at that a little bit differently. So you just need to be careful of what you're putting out there, making sure that it's compliant, making sure that someone at the brokerage has looked at it. And I will say 100%, some of the things that I think are compliant, ADRE might not think they're compliant. There is no guideline. Their guideline is clear and prominent. Now, everybody could have a different interpretation of what clear and prominent means. The only one that I could tell you is a hard, fast rule is if you have a website, the employing broker needs to be at the top of the screen without scrolling on every single page. So that's the only one I can definitively tell you needs to be done. But everything else is kind of open to interpretation. They'll take you into a room and they'll say, okay, here's the whiteboard. I have a big pink checker on one corner and I have everything else is green. What do you notice first? Well, you notice the pink. Okay, well, that's how the marketing should be with My Home Group's logo. So not very specific and not very clear. It just says clear and prominent. So usually if you send me something, my number one comment is, hey, make the My Home Group logo a little bit bigger, or put it in the center, or put it on both sides, or something like that. And it's tough for agents, and we get the frustration when they come to us for review and they come to us for design, but ultimately, it's tough. And I always have to say, preface, like, hey, that looks good to me, but that's not to say that someone wouldn't complain about it. So that's a tough one for us, just because there is no, like, agents ask me, well, do you have size guidelines? Do you have this? And I said, we don't, because there aren't any. That guideline doesn't exist. So it's kind of us out there just trying to interpret what that meant. John, I know you had something to say about that one.
Well, actually, since you're talking about the advertising guidelines, also make sure anytime you have a property that's owned by someone with a listing, with a real estate license, that's owner agent. Even if it's inactive, that owner agent disclosure has to be on every damn ad. And that's really hard to pull off sometimes on the internet. Make sure if you're allowing people to use the aggregating marketing, that you have owner agent in the public remarks. Otherwise, every time that ad shows up without owner agent is a violation of actually Arizona statutes, as well as the code of ethics. And it's one of the easiest things to forget. It's one of the most common things that I catch is people forget the owner agent. It really is that big of a deal. It's like rule number one of 10 million rules. The other thing, you go ahead, Rand. I was going to get into what I want to talk about, disclosure. Are you done with marketing?
Yeah, go ahead and talk about disclosure, because that'll lead right into what I want to talk about next. So go ahead.
Okay, this is such a common conversation that but I'm pretty sure the term would be we, all the brokers on the broker hotline have, is about disclosure obligation. And some of the things that are going on in the marketplace and some of the justifications people use for non-disclosure. Like people waiving spuds, think that's okay. Waiving spuds is never a good idea. It's a seller protection document. And remember, spuds is in section 4A. And you've got these different places that tell you have to disclose. One is section 4A. Next is sections 5B and C. The next is Article 2 of the Code of Ethics in R4 281101B. Those are the statutes in the Code of Ethics. Where that line changes is your seller has to disclose anything that they know that may materially affect consideration paid by the buyer other than an opinion of value. That's what Section 5B says. Notice that's Section 5B. Spuds is in Section 4A. Your sellers need to understand if the buyer waives spuds, they're absolutely still obligated to disclose everything that's on the spuds if they know it. That doesn't release the seller from their disclosure obligation. It's and the excuses people are given, like I never occupied the property, is completely lame. And you can study in the case law that never flies well, because I know Andrew lives just west of where I'm at right now. Give me his address and I can answer 16 to 20 questions on the spuds. And the beauty of the spuds, it's not answering the question, says, I don't know, you figure it out. From a court's point of view, not delivering his spuds, says, I knew, but I wasn't telling, which automatically makes the seller look bad. But my concern here that I want to bring up with you guys is the agent's duty to disclose, because there's all these broad, vague statutes about seller. Our duty to disclose is statutory. It's in Article 2 of the Code of Ethics. It's an ethical issue. And it's in R4 281101B that we must disclose anything we know. And where that becomes a problem is, and this is where I'm getting the questions that they're not liking my answer. They said the seller didn't disclose that, or the seller didn't deliver spuds. I said, but did you know? And they go, well, yeah, anything we know as agents, we must disclose. And here's the rub. Even if our seller doesn't want us to, our seller cannot instruct us to break the law. So if there's a water spot somewhere and the seller says it's no big deal, first of all, remember the 3 dumbest words in your real estate career are no big deal, because Andrew and I watch no big deals turn into big nasty monsters all day, every day. But the seller may think it's no big deal. You still must disclose. And we need to do a much better job of coaching our clients on their duty and obligation to disclose and the benefit. There really is no upside to waiving spuds. And if there's something on the spuds that you would know, you personally must disclose that, because for them, it's a cancel the contract, have an issue, maybe gets taken to small claims court after closing. For you, it's a complaint at the Department of Real Estate, and it is a license revocable offense. So we need to really understand that we think the seller has the obligation to disclose. That's true, but we have a tremendous burden. And because, and watch Andrew's eyes when I say this, because we have errors and omissions insurance. There's the face. Oh, he didn't make the face. It's like, yeah, we're obviously a target. So be very careful with your disclosure, because it's one of those areas that you have to realize 70 to 90% of litigation that happens after closing that involves brokers and sellers. Disclosure, more importantly, failed to, knew and did not disclose. The real area you need to be careful with is things you don't have to disclose. If you want to know if something is like confidential fair housing and you're not sure, that is a broker call, because we get into things like there's a group home next door. Okay, is it a protected class group home, or is it for elderly people that are just being taken care of? Those are 2 different disclosure obligations, because one is protected by fair housing and one is just simply there's running a business next door. That's a disclosure issue. So anytime you're concerned, call us. But in the most times, if the answer is when in doubt, disclose. All right, I'm done preaching.
I would agree with that. I mean, generally speaking, if you're calling me, asking me if I should disclose something, the answer is probably, yeah, you probably should. Very, very seldom is the answer, no, that I wouldn't worry about that. And I did have one over the weekend where I said, no, I wouldn't worry about that. And it just happened to be, hey, my seller was outside and smelled marijuana smoke. Do I have to disclose that my neighbor smokes marijuana? And I said, well, would you disclose that he smokes cigarettes? And he's like, well, no. And I said, well, it's legal in Arizona, so why would you disclose that? So, or would you disclose that your neighbor likes to drink a Coors Light every couple nights or something? It's one of those things. It's like, where do you stop? But in that particular instance, because it's recreational, is legal in Arizona, like, what do you need to, it's just a thing, it's like I wouldn't call that a material fact. So does anybody have any questions?
Unless you're from California, then it's a selling point.
Anybody have any questions on disclosure? Because this, like John said, this is probably the number one call we get. And it's tough because buyers will always assume the second something closes and something goes wrong, they will always assume that the seller knew about it, the seller hid it from them, and they want to talk to an attorney. And that is a very, very tough road to prove, not that someone maliciously withheld information from you. So if it's tough, that's a tough thing to do. But what's not tough is filing an ADRE complaint, filing an ethics complaint, because they don't have to prove anything. They can file it. And then you have to defend yourself. And what's crazy to me about the ADRE and even the code of ethics, it almost flips our justice system on its head. It's like, you got to prove that you didn't do it, not prove that you did do it. So they don't have to prove that you did, you have to prove that you didn't. So it's one of those situations where if you know, disclose, and if you don't know, make it very clear to your seller what the rules are, what the obligations are, because when they sign that listing contract, they're telling you, hey, I'm going to give you all these things. I'm going to tell you everything I know about the property. They signed a contract that says they will do those things for you. They'll provide a spuds. They'll provide you anything. They'll provide you an insurance history. They'll tell you any material fact about the property so that you can provide those material facts to any potential buyer. And that's something that's in the listing contract. And then they say it again in the purchase contract, hey, we're going to provide you all this information. So there's no reason not to do it. And like John said, it is 100%. I don't view that as a buyer disclosure. I view that as a CYA for the seller. To me, that's what it is. And I've had this hard conversation with several of my clients. Like when the subject came up of, I don't really think it's a big deal. We probably don't want to disclose that. I don't want to lose the buyer. And I said, well, would you rather close escrow and then have a lawsuit or go find another buyer? And when you think about it in those terms, it's always, well, shoot, we might as well just disclose it to them. And generally speaking, when we, in our cases anyway, when we've disclosed it, the buyer's like, okay, thank you for the disclosure. We'll move forward. So it's usually not as big as a problem as they think. And it's always better to be honest. You don't ever want to have to defend yourself. I'd rather go find another buyer than have to defend myself later. And that's what every seller's position should be. You don't want to have to deal with it later because it will cost you more than it's going to gain you. So,
Hey, Andrew.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Andrew, you said something that's really important that I'm amazed the agents don't understand this. And you were talking about the Department of Real Estate. Remember, there are three types of law. There's criminal law, guilty till proven innocent. There's civil law. There's no action until adjudication. And there's administrative law. And administrative law is what we answer to. And it truly is guilty until proven innocent, which is why you never want to be downwind from an ethics complaint or the department, because you have to prove you didn't do it. And one of the great classics lines of life is it's always more difficult to prove negative. So remember that we are guilty till proven innocent. If they point the finger at you, you're in trouble. You have to tell them, prove that you don't need to be in trouble. And that's an administrative law hearing at the Department of Real Estate. And my friends, that's a day you never want in your life. I've never had one personally, but I've been in the room and they're painful.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, and they're pretty strict on it. And and the other thing too is like you can, and this is what I always tell people, like if you have a buyer issue, a buyer threatening, buyer seller, someone threatening to go to ADRE, the second they send it to ADRE, even if you make it right with them and they say they were going to withdraw, it does not matter. ADRE will investigate no matter what. That bell, once it goes, ethics complaints can be withdrawn. ADRE complaints will not be withdrawn. That bell cannot be unrung. So once it's rung, that process is going to play out. And whether you made it right with your buyer, seller, whoever, other agent, whether you made it right or not, they're going to find out, and there could be some kind of disciplinary action from the Department of Real Estate. And what that is just depends on severity. It could be a fine, it could be classes, could be license revocable, could be license suspension. But it just depends on what you do. Most of the time it's a fine, and then they make you take CE on top of your CE. So, and that's no fun. No one wants to take 30 hours when they only needed 24, or 40 hours when they only needed 24. So
unless it's my class.
Unless it's John's class, exactly. So does anybody have any questions on that part? Because it is an important thing. And just last week I had 3 ADRE complaints come through across my desk, varying levels of severity, but one of them was a disclosure, and it was owner agent, which kind of leads me into my next topic is marketing to the public. And I posted about this on our Facebook mastermind group. I posted about it because of the ADRE complaint we got. And it's one of those things, especially if it's your own property, but every time you should strive that your MLS listing either is 100% accurate, or you omit the and tell the buyer they need to figure it out. Like those are the only two lines for me. It's you're either 100% right or you don't say it. If you think it has a new roof, but you're not sure, then I wouldn't say I have a new roof. I would not advertise it as a new roof. Or if I'm not sure how extensive the plumbing remodel was, then I'm not saying we have all new plumbing. I'm not saying we have all new electrical, because the second something goes wrong, the buyer comes and says, well, you told me it was all new. You know, where's the warranty? B, who did the work? And, where's all that information? And if you can't provide that, it becomes a pretty big issue. And it could become an issue where that buyer, this is what our attorney tells me all the time. So if you go to the first step, if they get an attorney, the first step is going to be, hey, why don't you file code of ethics? Why don't you file with the department? Okay. If they win those, then they have something that says from your peers or an institution that's governing your actions, they have something that says you did wrongdoing. And now they have even more cannon fodder to take you to a lawsuit. So it's one of those things where you don't want to go down that road if you can avoid it. So even on investor listings that I have, if I'm not sure if they just updated the roof, I'll say something like roof repaired. I will never say it's new because I don't know that for a fact. I will never say I'll say that they replaced the fixtures because I can see that they did that. And that's true. And we have receipts, but I won't say anything else about the plumbing because I don't know about the plumbing. And the same thing with, electrical. If they replace the electrical panel, I'll stop there. They replace the electrical panel. Everything else, I have no idea. So it's very important that when you write these listings out, especially on remodels, and flips are pretty prevalent right now, that when you write your listings in the public remarks, that you're very careful and choose your words carefully, because words, it doesn't matter what it was, if someone relied on it and it's not true and they bought the house, there's going to be repercussions. And that's true to every extent. And I know that a lot of brokers teach that the MLS is an advertisement to be verified by the buyer, not to be counted on. And that's true only it's marginally true, because there's something that's called the Consumer Fraud Act, that if it's big enough thing and someone lawyers up, a smart attorney is going to hammer you on the Consumer Fraud Act. And if it's a not true statement, we're going to lose every time, no matter what. We're going to lose, because the Consumer Fraud Act says that we have to be truthful in our advertisements, and MLS is an advertisement. So it's one of those things where it's to be verified for sure. Like, they have to do their due diligence, but if we provided information that is not accurate and they relied upon it, it's one of those things that sticks to us, because we have a license, we're licensed professionals, and we are held to a higher standard. And I can't stress that enough, especially when you own your own property. Even if you sell your property directly to somebody else, it's never on the MLS, doesn't come through the brokerage, you sell it direct, you're still a licensed professional, you're still held to a higher standard. And if you said something to them that was relied upon, you could be held accountable. And that's something to consider every time it's consumer versus agent, we're going to lose. We are going to lose because we have the license. They don't. We know better. They're not to know better. And you don't ever want to be on the other side of a judge or a lawyer saying, hey, show me your documents, and you don't have it all. You don't have all the disclosures. You don't have the spuds. You don't have every single piece of paper that you could have gotten to protect yourself from any kind of consumer complaint. And I say that because the last 12 months were so crazy with buyers trying to win contracts, right? Everybody was so focused on winning contracts. Well, now buyers are starting to have a little bit of buyer's remorse. Like, hey, did I pay too much for this house? Did I give up too much? Why did I pay $50,000 over appraised value? Why did I waive everything under the sun? Why did I do X, Y, Z? And they're looking for someone they're mad at themselves, obviously, but they're looking for someone to blame. And that's just the culture we live in, the society we live in. They're looking for someone else to point the finger to. And hey, my home group sold, $6 billion in real estate last year. So they got deep pockets. Let's name them in a lawsuit. That's just how it works. And John will tell you that's how it's always worked. And it's how it's going to continue.
You know what I say that what lawyers all over town are relying on: desperation leads to litigation. That's what came up with that February of this year, and it seems to be more prophetic than trite.
And it's true.
Pathetic,
I mean, it's just true. It's everything I'm seeing right now is, the market's cooling off slightly. The buyers who bought in May last year, February, March, April, May, June, are And that's where that's where the majority of the complaints I'm seeing, the majority of the ethics complaints are all things that closed in that window when it was really crazy. So it's just one of those things to live and learn from, but we need to protect ourselves. We always need to send my recommendation is always to get it confirmed in writing. Like whatever crazy thing your buyer wants you to do to win a deal, or whatever crazy thing your seller wants you to do that's not illegal, that doesn't violate any of the statutes, that you wouldn't advise normally, right? You send an email, say, hey, just to confirm our conversation, this is what you want me to do, even though I'm telling you I don't think it's that great of an idea. And they say, yep, then there you go. And at least you have papered your file the best way possible. That's the best advice I can always give you. That's the best advice our attorney will ever give you, is paper your file. Verbal conversations don't matter. They'll never matter, especially in a situation where it's consumer versus agent. Because the agent, we're supposed to know better. We're supposed to get things in writing. We're supposed to do all those things, right? So that's our obligation. It's the benefit. It's the reality of, and the benefit of being able to make money in real estate. You have this license that ties you to all these other rules and obligations and ethics and all those things that we have to uphold. And it's just something I'm seeing as a recurring theme, and it's a recurring call on the broker hotline. It's a recurring call from other agents. It's a recurring call from consumers. And it's just, something to be very cognizant of. We're in this business to make money. I know you guys are all in this business to make money. I'm in this business to make money. But you also need to think about keeping the money once you make it, because the last thing I want to do is defend a lawsuit where I know we all hate those situations where we know something is true. We know that we did the right thing, but we don't have a damn thing that says that in writing. And those are the absolute worst situations to be in, because we can't prove it. And, a simple, like if Dax was on this call, Dax Watson's our legal counsel, he'll tell you that probably for 22 years, he's defended real estate agents. And he'll tell you the majority of those cases could have been avoided had someone sent an email saying, hey, to confirm our conversation, this is what you want me to do. Or to confirm our conversation, this is what the seller said, or this is what the HOA said, but you should probably call the HOA yourself. Those kinds of emails may seem redundant, may seem over the top, but it's just like having a gun. You'd rather have a gun and not need it than need one and not have it, right? It's the same theory. You'd rather have all those emails and never need them than one time you need them and you don't have it. And I'm sorry to take this to such a dollar protective kind of legal side of this, but this is just, I think this is just the climate we're in right now, and I think it's going to continue to be this climate. And if anything should happen where the market slightly turns and prices drop, I would think there's going to be a wave of these kind of complaints, because then consumers are really going to be pissed off and really upset of what they paid for these houses, even though it was of their own free will to do so. They're really going to be looking for someone somewhere. Why did you let me do this? Why didn't you give me better advice? Yep. Go ahead, John.
Andrew, it's the classic. You never want to be downwind from this statement. If I had known then what I know now, I would have done things different. That is the wall that eventually we're going to run into. Hopefully we've slowed down. We don't hit it full speed, but you never want your client to say to you, well, if I'd known then what I know now, I would have acted different. Which ties back to that disclosure, but it has so much to do with advertising and making sure that whatever they need to know, they know, and whatever decisions they make, they know how you felt about it. And again, if it ain't in writing, it ain't. And that's actually, we're statute of frauds pro evidence state. That's the law. If it's not in writing, then oral discussion will never overcome that which is in writing. So when in doubt, write it out.
I 100% concur, because it saved a couple of our agents. It saved a couple of ethics complaints. It saved a couple of lawsuits where we were able to provide documentation, say, this is what you said. Like, what do you want us to do about it? You said it, you signed it. What else do you want us to do? And it's one of those things where even so much as like team members, agent to agent team members, team disputes, commission disputes, if you have it in writing and that's what someone said, then that's, it's easier for us to at least show, and because at the end of the day, anybody can sue for anything, and they can bring a lawsuit if they want, and they can file an ethics complaint if they want, and they can go to the ADRE if they want. There's nothing that we can do to stop that. But if we have a strong case that we can present at the outset, maybe it discourages them from doing so, because then it's just a waste of time and money, because they know they're wrong, and they know we've dotted every I and crossed every T that we can possibly do to dissuade them from doing it. So just one of those things that, I've made it a standard practice to follow up every phone call with a client with a text or an email, say, hey, this is, just to wrap it up, here's what we talked about, here's what I'm going to do right now. Here's who I'm going to call. Let me know if you have any questions, or let me know if it's something that is a yes or no. Hey, do you want me to send that? I'll send the addendum that says this. Is that correct? And I'll wait for them to respond before I fire it off. So it's just one of those things. As I've sat in this broker chair, John sat in this broker chair for a long time too. You just see so many things come across your desk. You're like, man, it was just a simple email, a simple something, a simple text, a simple follow-up would have saved so much heartache, saved so much money, saved someone's skin. So just super important. Probably the simplest, easiest thing that you can do on a daily basis to protect yourself from, any kind of lawsuit, any kind of ADRA complaint, any kind of ethics complaint. Super simple, super easy. Just got to make it a habit. Make that part of your process when you talk to clients. It's just a simple follow-up. It'll make you look professional. I mean, it really will. Make you look like a pro, make you look like that you know what you're doing. You're not being intrusive, you're being thorough, is how most clients view it. So any questions on that? Any comments, concerns? I know that's kind of a heavy subject, but it is, we do help people buy and spend the most money that they're ever going to spend on one transaction usually. So it comes with, what's that line? With great power comes great responsibility. Well, that's kind of what our license gives us. It gives us the ability to write contracts without being a lawyer. And that comes with some responsibility, and it comes with some pretty heavy ramifications if we screw it up.
Even on small things, Andrew, this is, I've preached this for 30 years and I can quantify it. Even on the small things, it takes usually 2 minutes to avoid a problem and no less than 2 hours to solve one, even what seems like small problems. So taking that extra time to practice, what I always say, potentially paranoid, prepared, preemptive, proactive problem prevention really matters. Think about what can go wrong and make sure it doesn't. And one thing can always go wrong is the you never said that, or they, you may have said it and they may absolutely misinterpret it. So one of the best things you can do in the problem prevention area and dollar protective is keep a record of your conversations, and the follow-up, that is magic. As a matter of fact, there was push in the E&O industry to require us to copy our clients on all correspondence, so that way that we could never be accused. Thank God they didn't go that way, because Andrew and I sure as heck don't want to enforce guys turning in a copy of all correspondence with everybody on your deals. But you definitely want to have those correspondence out there, because that is your bulletproof vest, is your documentation.
100%. So that's basically the couple things that I wanted to talk about. I'll just open it up for questions. Anybody have any questions, anything that they need to talk about? Questions about the market, questions about what we're seeing, questions on a specific deal, anything like that? Anybody got anything for us? No, nobody's got a single, you guys got it all figured out. I love it.
I was expecting someone to say, where's Brian Laundrie?
Hi, this is Sharon. I always like to say, I just certainly thank all of you for everything that you guys do there. Andrew and John, and definitely Mark and everyone. Really appreciate you all. I've had an exciting year. This is my 32nd year, and I really have been doing very well. New sell and resell, just one resell, but and I know it's thanks to my home group. So I really thank you guys for everything. And I am maybe overly, and I hope this was very informative as well. So again, thank you guys for all you do.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate that. We really are. And I know, you know, our job is to protect you guys. Our job is to protect the clients. Our job is to make sure that we have everything that we can get in case something goes wrong. And that's, you know, that's our job. Our job is compliance. Our job is protection. And sometimes it could feel like we're overbearing. Sometimes it can feel like we're asking for too much. But generally speaking, everybody in the broker department, closing department, we all want everybody to be paid as quickly as possible. But sometimes we can't when there's something outstanding that we know could be an issue, or we know will be a problem, or we know if you don't have that could turn into a big issue. So it's our job to do that. You know, it's not always a fun job. It's not always the most, it's not always the most appreciated job, I should say, because, you know, we sometimes have to make tough calls to our own agents, and we sometimes have to make tough calls to other agents. But, you know, our goal is always to help you guys, help everybody close deals, help everybody keep the money that you earn, help everybody get paid as quickly as possible. So it is a big job. So when you say something like that, Sharon, we really do appreciate it, because we do work. I know John, myself, we work, you know, probably 12 hours a day, almost every day, clearing, because I already went over how many transactions we're doing, and it's a lot. And it's a lot of files. It's a lot of calls.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of files, a lot of calls. So it's, you know, it's very nice to hear that we are appreciated. And, you know, we're never trying to be overbearing. We're only trying to get the deal done and look out for our clients, and mostly look out for our agents, and make sure that they understand what the requirements are and why those requirements are there. Because it's never anything that we just make like, I always joke when people complain, like, you know, John, myself, Todd, the other brokers, we're never sitting around just thinking, like, how can I deny this file? Like, what can I find in here that's going to make this file take longer, make me have to review it again, you know, because every time we reject something, we got to go back and review it. So it's our own queue that gets bogged down. So it's like, that's never our goal. And it's never what we're looking at. John likes to say, we're looking for reasons to approve your file, not looking for reasons to deny it. So if we deny it, that's kind of that's the last resort, because we're missing something that's needed, or could frankly void the deal or make it unenforceable, or, you know, because there's a lot of smart lawyers out there who know a lot about contracts, who could make something a problem. So we do appreciate that. We really do.
Hey,
And
Andrew.
sometimes it's your job to protect your client from themselves. Sometimes that's one of the toughest. Sometimes it's our job to protect you guys from yourselves. So we're never being adversarial. It's always about having your back, even if we are not doing what you want at that particular moment. We're always watching out for you.
Yeah, Jenny, what's up?
Oh, I got a list of what the topics were that some of our agents wanted to talk about.
Sure.
And I see that Lindsay is still on the call, and she wanted to discuss new forms. So Lindsay, were your questions answered, or did you want to touch on forms or documents that you need for a transaction?
Unmute. Hey, I actually signed up for there's a class that's being offered with there's some new, I'm not even quite sure what they are, some new forms on, you guys caught me off guard.
Sorry, is it for transaction desk or?
Yes, I think so. I just like to know what's out there in the right form to use for things. So.
Well, there hasn't been, the only couple updates for Forbes that have come out is
Okay.
they did the buyer advisory in about June. And what the buyer advisory change was that they essentially made the market condition advisory ancillary, because they included it in the buyer advisory. And then they changed the additional clause addendum with the appraisal shortfall language, because that was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 phone calls a day to the legal hotline, because agents were not writing that correctly. And then I know they had a Binzer that they were supposed to release in June, but it hasn't gotten released. And I don't know why or what happened with that. I haven't heard any, because it was supposed to add a fourth option to ask for a credit, which I know a lot of agents have been clamoring for, but for whatever reason, it hasn't come out. I don't know why it hasn't come out.
reached out, and here's why. The lawyers got a hold of it and started doing what ifs and realizing that the potential for it becoming in conflict with the contract. They've got to purify the language. When it went out for the loop, when I got a copy of it to look at and review, I thought it was pretty cool, but I thought there was a couple of holes in it. So they're just closing those holes because it will absolutely give the Benzer the true ability to alter the terms of the contract, and that changes the whole world of Benzer. So they're just not putting it out until they get it right, until all the lawyers have gone, this isn't going to get us sued. So that's it. That's the delay. They got real quiet about it. I finally reached out and found out why.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they announced it, I think they announced it June 1st, it was coming out, and then crickets. So interesting on that. And then the last one is the new ER that came out in, I want to say May. So those are the only updated forms for transaction desks that have come out that I know about. I haven't seen any others. Go ahead, John.
And our new affiliated business disclosure from April is also one that people are getting questioned on because they're using the old one they had on their file getting rejected. So we do have a new affiliated business disclosure that is the one that needs to be used now. That's as of April. We started enforcing that in July.
And best practice on that is to make sure that you're going in each and every time. You can find it in MAP under office documents, under brokerage specific docs. Best practice is don't save that to your desktop. Make sure you're grabbing a brand new one each time to make sure you have the most up-to-date and current version of it.
And we try,
what she said.
Yeah, what Jenny said is very true, but we try to keep that, maybe quarterly at the best, to update those. So we'll always put out something out on the Facebook mastermind group when we do update a new one. And I won't attach the document for just the reason Jenny said. We want you to grab a fresh one every time. And I get a lot of questions on that. We're not using those people. We're not, why do we need to disclose that? And what you got to remember always is, in the eyes of everybody, the client is the client of the broker and the brokerage. So regardless if you use those services, we have to disclose to all of our clients that we have affiliations with those specific vendors. And that's a RESPA thing, which is a huge animal we never want to deal with. So that's why it's a requirement. You could use them and not use them, that's fine. But in reality, they are our clients. So we have to get a disclosure to them that says, hey, these are my home group's affiliated businesses. So did it answer that question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we always try to give updates when we hear about new forms. We did the last one was in July, which was a major form, which was the ER. We did an update on that. I think our call was about that, not specifically, but we did include it. The buyer advisory, I didn't think that was much of a change. They didn't remove the market conditions advisory from transaction desk. They kept it. And it's in the buyer advisory. So, you could double down and use both if you want to. That's no problem. But other than that, there hasn't been, I'm trying to think what new forms. The ACAs do new, the buyer advisory is new. And when you log into, especially, I don't know about zip forms. I don't use zip forms anymore, but when you use transaction desk, anything that's new has a star by it because it's notated a change, and you can see when it's been changed when you select the file. So if you ever have any questions or you want to know, well, hey, what changed on this document, reach out to us and let us know.
Our other new form was the owner agent addendum is new to most people. So remember, when you have an owner agent deal, you need to do the My Home Group owner agent specific addendum. Again, that's in Office Docs.
That is in Office Docs. And the reason why we started requiring that is because everything that's listed on that document, all those specific, did you provide a SPUS? Did you provide a home warranty? Did you give them the opportunity to do an inspection? All those things, all the questions it asks is the exact thing the E&O carrier is going to ask us if for whatever reason that transaction goes to E&O. For us to even have a chance to get E&O coverage, we have to have, if you're an owner agent, have to have provided that information. And if we have it signed that the buyer was indeed given all those chances, then they're more likely that we'll get the owner agent exemption for our E&O coverage. So that's the reason why we did it. And on top of that, it's just good. It's just good for you as an owner agent to get the buyer to sign all that stuff. Like, hey, you had those opportunities. So just another acknowledgement, another CYA for you.
The target on your back, your target on your back's always this big when you're owner agent. It's that big. Simple as that.
Yep. And that's always been in the policies manual, but we decided to help our agents out to try to show that, hey, these are the things you need every time if you want E&O coverage, or if you want the potential for E&O coverage. Because even every E&O policy that I've ever seen, every broker probably has similar E&O coverage where it's anything that's owner agent is going to require an exemption. So in order to apply for the exemption, you have to follow those steps. Otherwise, it's just a flat no. There's not going to cover it. So,
and you indemnify, so it's on you.
Yep, 100%. What else was on the list, Jenny?
The only other thing, I see a lot about market update, which you gave. A lot of people want to know what's going on, what our future holds. I think all of our crystal balls are broken. But there was some question about Elevate and KV Core, which stay close. I'll just answer that. Stay close to my home group calendar. There's a lot of upcoming classes to talk about these tools and systems that we have, and there's going to be some great information coming out on those. But everything, I think we've touched on everything, Andrew.
Well, does anybody have any questions before we wrap up? It's about 10 minutes till we have some time for questions, or we can wrap it early. Anybody, any pressing matters? Hey, Jim, I see your comment on the chat. What is that? Can you clarify? Are you asking a question? You still on, Jim?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. No, I just popped in. Popped in late this morning. I understood that some of the market conditions. Obviously we're kind of looking at see what our future holds within our market based on some of the things that are happening. But I know that subject has been covered. Before I came in. Just don't want to be redundant about everything, but I'm gonna watch the the video to see what your takes are, and
Well, I mean, I'll give a quick recap, because I didn't really say anything about moving forward what I thought.
But then and then when I popped in, I knew you were talking about cover yourselves with your clients, take care, and then we talked about that when things are happening with the market, it may tank, you have to take the responsibility of letting people know what's happening. But then I kept thinking, all right, this is part of the the market condition disclosures that we that they signed, that they know what they're getting into. But then on top of that, we have to keep them informed.
Sure. So that couple of things there. So crystal ball, I don't have one. But I will say that, economics is always, you can always boil it down to supply and demand. And right now our supply in August was 1.34 months of supply, which if current trends continue with, population growth, that's not enough. And I don't know that we're going to run into a point in time where affordability smashes into demand and what people can afford. So we might have hit that wall now, but I don't know if we have or not. Hey, John, you're muted.
We already have. Our median income is 21% higher than our median, lower than our median house price. So we're already there, and that's the only bubble we'll have. We have already hit the affordability wall, and it's becoming a challenge, which is why the lower end market is so brutal. Because that's where you have the lower the price, the more affordability issues you have. People who buy $600,000 houses can afford 7. People who buy $300,000 houses can afford $295,000 houses. So but that force hasn't changed. We've been there for 14 months. So we're just kind of riding that affordability issue. The real thing that I'm watching, and everyone should be watching, is interest rates. Because that's the natural reaction to inflation, is to raise interest rates. And that's the only thing that would absolutely calm our market, at least in the next 6 months, is if interest rates went to 4, because that's going to add another 16% downfall to affordability versus a 3 versus a 4% interest rate. So that's where the real affordability in the future can get crazy, is when you're paying more interest, you're buying less house, and people are already wanting more house than they can afford.
Right. Well, and I think in terms of the market, you think, I mean, I don't, I would anticipate that, because with our population growth and everything that's happening, we still have a low supply, but then we have we have the interest rates that are still going up. I would think probably we're looking at a equilibrium in terms of the fair market value between now and probably in the future. I would assume that we're probably going to have an equilibrium of just a in terms of its fair market value, but not have a much of a drop or a significant of a drop. I would imagine.
I would equate it to, I don't think we're going to fall off a cliff. We might slowly come down a hill. That's how I would look at it. If anything happens, if anything changes, if anything, eventually you're going to see some sort of cooling off. It's just so the interesting thing about Arizona and Maricopa County specifically is you have two things fighting that. And the fighting that is, for 12 years, we didn't build enough houses. And now all of a sudden there's so many people coming here. So you have this opposition of forces that are pushing against each other and will push against each other. And like John said, the only thing that can throw that off is going to be the interest rates. But even so, people here would still, eventually interest rates will go up. Eventually prices will start to level off or go down a little bit. And then all the people who are here renting or quit looking are going to maybe have another chance to buy. So overall, I think we're still going to get the number of units. I just don't know that we're going to still get the number of that level of appreciation that we saw over the last 2 years. And that's how I would look at it for probably the next 6 months at least. Probably most of 2022 is going to be not like it was in the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, but more like it is right now. And maybe we'll see days on market start to creep a little bit. But I think people are here, they're going to live here. The people who moved here are still living here. The people who rented are still living here. And if they have another opportunity, they're going to take it, right? Eventually they're going to want to buy, not rent. And because they tried to buy and they couldn't. So I think eventually that's going to win out, but who knows what's going to happen. No, I don't think anybody can forecast past 12 months, not in this market.
I agree. I appreciate it.
Yep. No problem.
I can tell you next year's a midterm election year, and somehow or another, interest rates always come down when you get close to a midterm election. Because I don't think it's an accident. So even if we have a little bump in interest rates, amazingly how they always calm. This goes back 40 years. They always calm down before midterm election. Doesn't matter who's in power. So we got that to look forward to next fall.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works out, but we'll keep that comment to another time, another place. Anybody have any other questions? If not, we can wrap it up here. And I appreciate everybody always joining us for this broker update. You can always reach us. Email jdyer@myhomegroup.com, andrew@myhomegroup.com, or brokers@myhomegroup.com, and always the broker hotline. We're always here for you guys.
Thank you.
God bless you. Be well.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.